Hmm.
Good evening, everyone. So, welcome all of you in
सुमित व्हिडिओ ऑफ
our
सुमित व्हिडिओ ऑफ करून बोल.
third season of BOA PG examination and the document. Okay. So today we'll be presenting a lecture on basic retina examination and the documentation, which is very important and essential terminology
I think Swapnis.
Yeah, you can share the screen.
Yes. So, hello everyone.
Dr. Ashish Jain did his DN Retina Fellowship in Grand Medicine Professor at JJ Hospital. He will be presenting a lecture on retina examination today.
Yeah, Ashish, never mind. You can
Yes,
carry
sir.
on.
Yes, sir. Okay. So, hello everyone. I'll be sharing a small PPT for written examination and documentation. So, all of you all are very well versed, I'm sure, in your OPD. You all are doing IOs and examining the retina. The basic anatomy is what you should know. There is three parts you can divide it mainly. One is the posterior pole. One is joining all the vortex veins. You get the equator, and one is the ora serrata. So different modes of viewing, and you will come to know which one to use when. Okay. So method of examination is dilatation by drops. Allergy you have to take care of around 30 minutes. Wait for the patient to dilate. If you want to do a complete periphery examination, you should wait for a good amount of time, at least 30 minutes, and then see. So just a small history. It was started direct ophthalmoscope by Helmholtz 1851, and thanks to Charles Schlieffen, the father of modern vitrectomy, we got the binocular head-mounted IO, that is indirect ophthalmoscope. Going to the direct ophthalmoscope, I'm sure everybody in the PG in the first year, you are very well versed with all the functions of the DO. You have to go very close to the patient, look for the optic disc. The first thing is you look for the optic disc and then follow the vessels. It is a very magnified view, and definitely the viewing, the pathology is not very well appreciated in a DO as compared to 90D or a IO. But for your ward calls, for your just seeing the reflex or the disc, it's very useful. COVID situation, I'm sure everybody has not used DO a lot. So let's move on to the next mode of viewing. The first we should go for the slit lamp view, that is with a 90D and a 70D. I'll come to that later. Next is the indirect ophthalmoscope. Indirect ophthalmoscope is a standard retinal examination, should be done with the IO or a slit mounted 90D or a 78D. IO gives a binocular vision, it gives a stereopsis, it gives an inverted image with a low magnification, that is 5x, and a large field of view. So you can examine almost till the equator and almost till the ora in the temporal region when you see with the IO, and with indentation you can see the entire retina all throughout. The ideal position of the ophthalmoscope, the perpendicular of the examiner should be perpendicular. The IO should be perpendicular to the visual axis of the examiner. The scope should not rest on the nose, it should just be above the nose. Okay, the eyepiece should be as close to the examiner's pupil as possible, and the IPD has to be adjusted. So what I generally do is I mount the IO, you see the headband, you take the IO, and then you pull the eyepiece as close to your pupil as possible. Then you maintain your IPD, that is IPD you check with both the eyes, you see where your eye is there and you maintain the IPD. Then you take your thumb at one working distance, and then you see the circle of light. When you on it, there's a circle of light that should be seen with both the eyes when you close each eye. Okay, that is how you focus with the IO, that your centration is good, the IPD is maintained. Okay. Next, there are the different lenses, condensing lenses which we use. It is called indirect because we are seeing through a condensing lens. That is why it is called indirect ophthalmoscopy. You can use 2-3 type of lenses. Most commonly used is a 20D and a 2.2 lens. 20D gives a fairly good view with a magnification of 3.25. 2.2 gives almost the same field of view but a greater periphery you can examine with a 2.2 lens. So holding the lens, holding the 20D, you have to see, you have to hold it between your thumb and the index finger. This is the common thing. You have to see it's a spheric lens. So you have to see the black ring or the more convex surface is facing towards you. This is the way you should hold your lens, between your thumb and the index finger. These three fingers, they act as a pivot. So you have to, one is you have to keep on the patient's forehead. Second, the other hand can be used to keep the upper lid, to invert the upper lid, and then you can see with both the hands maintaining the IO. So this is the skill you have to maintain. You have to start using on every patient, and slowly you will come to know how you can use with different positions. This is normally perpendicular to the patient, and as you're seeing here also, you see a inverted and a ulta image. That is at 12 o'clock will be at 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock will be at 3 o'clock with the inverted image. Scleral indentation. Indentation is very useful to see the peripheral lesions. Ideally, every patient should be indented, but obviously in a busy OPD, you might not be able to do. But in a high myope, in a RD patient, use the indenter, start getting a hang of it. There are two types of main indenters. One is a thimble scleral depressor, one which you can put in the thumb or the index finger. Index finger, you put it and then you indent the sclera. And second is a pencil type depressor, which also you can use. So how you hold, generally I use it in the index finger, and with the thumb you are holding, then I hold it with the index finger. On the other hand, I make it with the index finger and I indent with the other hand. The thumb I use to retract the lower lid or the other eye. Okay, so this is how you go beyond the sulcus. You tell the patient to look down first, then you put the depressor, and then you tell the patient to look in the direction where your indenter is. And in the last, you depress with the depressor. It is not initially, if you depress initially, the patient will not be able to look up or he'll be in pain. So tell the patient to look in the opposite direction, put the indenter, then tell the patient to look and then indent. So this will give you the periphery view up till the ora serrata. This is how, this is the holding position that you should keep. So the other hand is holding the depressor, the hand is holding the lens, and the other hand is holding the depressor. So in general, what you should do is you should keep a pattern of examination. You start with the right eye or the left eye, but keep in mind, maintain that. Me being a left-handed person, I start always with the left eye. Some people mainly start with the right eye. Even while viewing, first start with the posterior pole and then move in the superior or superior nasal, wherever you want to start, and then maintain a clockwise direction. This will help you in documenting all the findings that you see on the IO. A small difference, all of you all are aware about it, between the DO and the IO. The DO gives an erect, upright, virtual image. In the IO, it's a reverse and an inverted image. Magnification is too high in the direct ophthalmoscope, with the field of view is very less, that is 5 degrees. In the IO, the magnification is very less, that is 2 to 4x, and the field of view is very wide, around 40 to 50 degree. The DO, you have to go very close. It has to be exactly near the cornea. In the IO, it is generally optimal working distance is 40, that is 1 arm length of the examiner. You have to find out where your working distance is. So generally what we do normally is you head mount the IO, you take the lens, and it's a small flexion at the elbow, and you keep the lens at the patient's, in front of the patient's eye. Then instead of moving the head, you try to move the 20D little ahead and behind, and you'll get the best working distance for you. So moving with the slit lamp microscope, generally we use a non-contact lens, that is a 78D or 90D. Obviously contact lenses can also be used. The Volk lenses, the wide field view can be used, and the centralis lens can be used to see the posterior pole. So a 90D and 78D are the most commonly used. You can see even with the undilated pupil, you can easily see the posterior pole with the 78D or a 90D. The advantages of 90D and 78D is that the posterior pole is very nicely appreciated. So if you have any good findings on the posterior pole, there's a good magnification to it, around 10 to 16x, and it will be appreciated much better on a slit lamp biomicroscope. Using the 90D, you get an image like this, which is again inverse and inverted. So you have to make sure you get to know which quadrant you're looking at. The inferior one, the vessel which you will be seeing is actually the superior, and the superior is inferior. So make sure you get the hang of it, that it's an inverted image. Okay. How to examine using a slit lamp is, first, positioning of the patient has to be accurate. You have to make sure the patient is sitting with his head and chin touched to the chin rest and the headrest. The microscope slit lamp, you adjust in the retro illumination mode. you take the similar holding, the position is similar, you hold it with the thumb and the index finger. The three fingers, the pinky finger or the middle, the less finger used on the rest above the chin rest, you can keep it there. And the lens has to be exactly in front of the patient's pupil. Then in the retroillumination mode, you slowly take the slit lamp behind. You take the slit lamp behind, you'll see a orangish glow, and then you'll start appreciating the posterior pole. When you start it, then you can keep a very narrow slit lamp during the examination, and then you move left and right to see the posterior pole and the disc. You can also make it slightly oblique illumination to see the macula, but in a retroillumination, you'll be able to appreciate the posterior pole at entire length. And even in adult patient, this should be generally be done in all the patients you are seeing, because even with a good vision, the patient might have changes in the posterior pole which can be appreciated. A 78D will give you a better magnification and a smaller field of view. Both lenses are equally good and can be used interchangeably. The Ruby lens, it gives a erect image, a virtual image, and a very magnified image. You can use it, but generally a 90D and 78D are very good and can be used. Contact lenses, a contact lens, you can use a 4-mirror gonioscope or a Volk wide view lenses. The central view is the which you use for the posterior pole. The other mirrors can be used to see the equator, ora serrata, but I think a IO is a much better viewing system than a 3-mirror. And the Volk lenses, a 165 wide field view, can also be used, but it's a contact system. Generally in the OPD, you'll not use it unless you're using it for any procedure. So this is regarding the examination, a 20D, a 90D, and a 78D. Mainly in a patient, adult patient, you can go with the 78D and a 90D and see the posterior pole. But if you're dilating the patient, IO is the best way. Examining on the IO, the patient should be reclined. Ideally, if it's a sitting position, you'll not be able to see the superior periphery very well. Recline the patient and then get to the head end of the patient. The documentation will come later, but examination and then start with all the angles, all the different directions you have to view. Okay, so moving to the documentation, this is how the Amsler-Dubois chart looks like. Just a minute. Hold. So you have 3 circles. The first circle is the junction of the pars plana and the plicata. The second junction is what you call the ora serrata, and third is the equator, is where all the 4 vortex veins are. So this is how a Amsler chart looks like. Now, how should you position the Amsler chart while examining? The Amsler chart should be inverted and reversed. So if you see the 12 o'clock is at the lower end, the 9 o'clock, the 6 o'clock is at the upper end, and the 3 o'clock is at the eye you are examining. So if you are examining the right eye, the 3 o'clock will be towards the right shoulder, and if you are examining the left, 3 o'clock will be towards the left shoulder. So it's an inverted and a reversed image. So when you are seeing the image, now if this is the IO in the center, you are seeing a lattice at 1 o'clock, you're seeing a horseshoe tear at 11 o'clock. On the chart, you exactly diagonally opposite to it, you see there is the 11 o'clock, and diagonally opposite there's a 1 o'clock. So the examination, whichever direction you're doing, it's diagonally opposite where you have to draw the lesion. Drawing the lesion, one is the area. Second is you have to correlate which periphery extent it is going up to. So generally a lattice or a cystoid generation, you'll see towards the ora serrata. So you have to make sure you're drawing it outside the equator. If you're seeing any pathology which is inside the equator, you'll draw it little inside. Now, during examination, you have to understand if you're not making the patient lie down, or if you're not keeping the diagram on the patient, you have to understand when you're making the patient see in the superior nasal quadrant, the pathology is in the superior nasal quadrant, not that it is in the inferotemporal quadrant. The pathology is in the superior nasal quadrant, although the finding which you're seeing towards you is actually in the periphery, and which you're seeing in the periphery is actually towards the optic disc, and the left right are inverse. So generally I see residents asking me, sir, if you're seeing in the superior nasal quadrant, is it inferotemporal? No. When you're making the eye turn towards superior nasal, you are seeing the superior nasal quadrant only, although it's a reversed image, but of the superior nasal quadrant. So you have to make sure when you're examining, you see which quadrant the patient is seeing. Starting with the patient lying down and the Amsler chart on the patient, you know that the Amsler chart has been kept reverse, and that is why it is diagonally opposite where you draw the finding. Okay. So moving with the color coding, it's a very simple thing. First is you have to draw the ora serrata. Ora serrata can either be brown or a blue color. The temporal half of the ora serrata is always a smoother version than the nasal half. Generally 11 to 1, 11 to 7 and 7 to 1, the temporal half is smoother. You draw it with a blue line. The color coding is red for the retinal arterioles, hemorrhage, microaneurysm, attached retina. But attached retina, only if a patient of RD, you need to draw the red attached retina. Otherwise, you can just keep it white. A hole or break, the center is red and the periphery is blue. Just a minute. Hello? हाँ एक मिनट ठीक मैं करता हूँ मेरा फोन से हो गया चलेगा sorry. So the center of the hole or break is red in color and the periphery margin is blue in color. So blue is retinal venules, a detached retina or a outline of the break. All the exudates, edema, you draw in yellow. Anything in the vitreous is green. Vitreous opacities, vitreous haze, you see IOL, you see IFB is all green. Brown is pigmentation or a detached choroid and black is the ora serrata. We'll see the color coding very briefly in this picture. This picture almost summarizes all the retinal RD changes that you see. Starting with the red, you can see on the superior nasal, we have a HST. The HST is always red in the center with a blue outline. If you have a flap, the flap will be also is a detached part, so you draw it with blue. If you have rolled edges, you draw with a blue crossed line. A lattice degeneration is with blue crosses. If anything vitreous condensation, you give a green outline to it. Then there is snowflake degeneration, which you will not draw much, but in a patient of uveitis, yes, you should draw it with a blue. Any hemorrhage, any blood is generally red. Any CD is brown. Now, when charting a RD, you need to understand charting a RD is the most important for any retina surgeon because the surgery you decide depending upon what the extent where the break is, how the parameters RD are. So generally during the charting, you should see in the periphery till what clock hour the RD is extending. So if you have a subtotal RD, you see a temporal RD, you have to make sure the superior what clock hour the RD is, inferior what clock hour the RD is, and then see the posterior whether it is involving the vessels, whether it is involving till the optic disc or whether it is extending beyond a subtotal RD. So that demarcation you have to know the RD configuration. Second part is the break. You have to see exactly with indentation where the break is and then draw it at that quadrant because your surgery is dependent on how the configuration of the RD is. Then the laser marks in a post-RD patient or if it's a diabetic patient, fresh laser marks are yellow in color and the old laser marks is black in color. A detached retina is always blue in color. If there's a shifting fluid, you draw it with a blue crossed line. So white without pressure is blue crossed. I'll come to each and every part also. And yellow is also retinitis. You see with the yellow. Active choroiditis you draw with yellow and a heel choroiditis you draw with brown. These all images are very nicely given in eOphtha. This is also downloaded from there. You can copy it and you can save it for all your future references. An arthritic vessel, if you see it, there's a periphlebitic sheathing, you can draw it with yellow. There are exudates, you always draw with yellow. The vitreous, anything in the vitreous, a haze or a praspana exudate or a snow banking, you draw with green. So I'll again now come to the drawings. A red solid, if you see, there is a retinal arteriole. In a center, you'll draw the optic disc. It will be just be nasal to the center, the optic disc, and the macula should be drawn with a red small dot. Then you draw the arterioles with red. This is the basic fundus which you'll draw for every patient. Then depending upon findings, you'll draw, if you see a NV, you draw with red. If you see any vascular abnormality, if you're seeing attached retina in a RD patient, you draw with red. Moving to the periphery, if there is any break, that is you have a break in retinoschisis, the outer layer is drawn with red. And if there is attached retina, hole or HST, as I told you, the center is red with a blue outline. Red crossed lines you'll use for the open. The beyond periphery portion of a GRT is drawn with a red crossed line. This is something you should know. Also in a outer portion of the retinal hole in inner layer of retinoschisis. So retinoschisis, if it's in the outer layer, you draw with a red solid. If it's in the inner layer, you draw with a red crossed line. These things you need to know because these are not very well, we do not document it every time. Moving with blue solid, a detached retina is always with a blue solid. The retinal veins, if you're drawing, it's with a blue solid lines. Now, outline of a retinal break, a HST or a flap of a HST, you draw with blue. And if there is a rolled margins, you draw with a blue crossed lines. So blue crossed lines are inner layer of retinoschisis. Any retinoschisis, you draw with a blue crossed lines. White without pressure areas also you draw with the blue crossed lines. Rolled over edges of the retinal tears in a GRT, you should draw with the blue crossed lines. So these are the general, in a RT patient, you should know all of these findings very well. Moving to the green solid, as I told you, any opacity in the media, a vitreous hemorrhage, vitreous membrane, even the V ring, you can draw with a green. IOFB is with a green. A drop lens or a drop nucleus is also with a green. Green dotted images is for any media opacity like asteroid hyalosis, you see syneresis, you see frosting, snowflakes, you see is drawn with a green dotted lines. If there is vitreous condensation, sometimes you see in the central part of the lattice, you see some vitreous condensation. So you should give a hint of green in the lattice. Brown solid is for any tumor, a choroidal tumor or real tissue is with a brown. Detached PEDs also you can draw with a brown, but generally in a IO you will not be able to appreciate the PED unless it is a very large PED. Any choroidal melanoma or a nevus or a CD is with a brown. Any choroidal tissue pathology is with a brown. Yellow solid, as I told you, hard exudates, gliosis, or in the posterior pole if you see drusen's, they are with yellow. Mass, you see retinoblastoma can be done with a yellow stippled, that is a yellow dotted area. Black solid is for any pigmentation, that is laser marks. If you see established with pigmented laser marks, old laser marks, you draw with black. Any cryo mark you see is also with a black. So all the scars, laser marks and cryo are with black. So moving just a quick revision, red is for arteries, red is for HSTs, center for breaks, outline with a blue. When you have a hemorrhage, you draw with red. Blue is generally for a detached retina, the flap of the HST or a lattice. And if you have anything in the vitreous, you go with green, and anything in the choroid, you have brown. So this is a general the documentation of the fundus. So when a patient comes to you, a young patient, high myope patient, you dilate the patient, you make him lie down, you observe with the 20D the posterior pole, see the periphery, indent him, try to document each and every patient. Once you get the hang of it, a documentation will be very nice to follow up the patient to see how the things are improving or worsening. So this is a small talk on examination and documentation. So Professor, if you would like to add anything to it, sir?
No, I just like students refer various textbooks for this color coding. There might
sir.
be some areas
Yes,
where
yes,
it is given different in Yanov versus different in Datta versus different in Kansky. You can follow any textbook that you want. Labeling is very important. So if you label it correctly and more or less your color coding is acceptable in any one of the standard textbooks, I think you won't go wrong in that. Labeling is important. And mainly like crisscrosses or drawing the shape of horseshoe tear or how ora serratized on. You can't draw the indentations at or the meridional folds which are more prominent to the nasal edge. You can't draw it to the temporal side. You can't make that gross mistake of wrongly labeling the optic nerve temporally. So if you have a basic picture in mind, if you label it correctly, and no need to argue whether this textbook is right or that textbook is right. Whatever Ashish has told, basically you can follow that, or whichever textbook you follow, but label it and draw it correctly.
Correct. So basically the important parts are almost common in all the fundus documentation. It is just the uncommon features that you may debate about whether it's a different color. So attached retina, red, all the breaks in red, the outlines to be blue, detached retina in blue. These are the main things you need to know. Anything in the vitreous is green. These three color codings are very constant and you should be very well aware of it, whether how you should draw it.
Yeah, you can't draw a vitreous hemorrhage red in color.
Yes.
Because it is hemorrhage, you can't draw it red. So that nobody will pardon you.
Correct.
Yeah. Ashish, I would like you to tell them what all things they can use for depressing and how to start
Right.
without harming the patient, how to slowly start the technique and learn the technique of depressing, and also how to depress the nasal and the temporal quadrants.
Correct. So first of all, when you're using a depressor, it can be, as I showed you, the thumb depressor, or you can even use a cotton bud, or you can use a needle cover. Any object you can use to indent, but it should, preferably in the beginning, you can use a scleral depressor, that is a thumb depressor. I find it very easy to use. Inferior quadrants are easy to depress because you have enough space there to depress and the patient easily sees. So that is the place where you should start with. I generally start with the superior quadrant and I go anti-clockwise, but you can choose your pattern of depressing. Make the patient look the opposite side wherever you're depressing, and first when the patient looks in the direction of the depressor, then is when you should depress. You can use the paracaine eye drop or you can not, it is generally not required. Temporal and nasal quadrant is where you don't have the skin where you can use. So generally what I do is I take the superior lid a little bit down and I indent it with the superior lid ka cover, and nasally similarly I do it. And that is how you can use the depressor to depress the temporal and the nasal quadrant with the depressor. And in case if you just have to see something, you can use it on directly on the sclera. There was previously I've seen people using directly on the sclera, but it's generally not advisable because it is not sterile. The depressor is not sterile. So use the eyelid skin to take it with the along with the thumb, along with the depressor, and then you can make the patient look temporally, and you tell the patient to look there and you depress it. You will easily be able to see the temporal periphery and the nasal periphery as well.
Yeah. Also, when will you never depress?
It's an immediate post-op patient. If the wound is fresh, if you see the globe integrity is not intact, you'll never depress. If it's a very hypotonous eye, you will never depress.
Yeah, I think you have covered it, most of the important one. Suppose you see a patient with a corneal tear
Yes.
and a seal corneal tear, and just because you have been taught how to see the retinal periphery, don't depress that patient. A seal corneal tear, you may open it up, because
Yes.
you would be, as first year residents, as second year residents, you would be the first people to examine that patient, and by the time your senior arrives, and you would have created a complication yourself by depressing that patient. Suppose a patient is coming with an iris prolapse, don't depress those patients, because obviously even if the patient is cooperative, you have used paracaine, don't depress those patients. uh, Another thing I would like you to know, that how do you take care in this COVID times, especially while doing a slit lamp 78 or a 90-day examination?
So basically, sir, now since we're not using DO, we're not going very close to the patient. The best thing is to use a shield. All the slit lamp providers are providing with the shield, which you can put up in the eyepiece. So that is one good thing. Using a face shield for the examiner, I generally don't find it very comfortable. There are issues with fogging. There are issues with the distance of the eyepiece. So a screen in front of the eyepiece is generally a very good. You can use an X-ray or an MRI sheet. You can cut holes and you can put it up on the slit lamp. So that is generally a very good on the slit lamp. On the IO, you can similarly, they've provided the vendors have provided with a shield on the IO also. But IO, I generally find that is far off and there's no need for much shield required for the IO. Just that whenever you're touching the patient, maintain the sanitization. That's it. I think IO is very safe in COVID times. Wear a mask, nothing else.
I would just like to add is, if you're doing a 78 or a 90-day examination on the slit lamp, try to use gloves, because even if you are very careful, you are bound to touch the external surface of the mask of the patient. And most of the times, before you can see anything, the 90D or the 78D will get fogged by the exhaled vapors
Correct. Yes.
of the
Yes.
patient. So usually I have just given it up to examine on, because with
Correct.
mask,
Correct.
by the time you are able to focus, you are so close to the corneal surface that your lens gets fogged
Yes.
immediately.
Yes.
So
So I think, sir, indirect ophthalmoscopy is something which is been useful to all the residents during COVID times. If all the fundus calls in JJ we've converted to IO. So I think now all residents should start using IO regularly in the OPD also, so that they get a hang of it.
Yes, yes. Any questions? If you have, you can type on the chat. Otherwise, I think Ashish has covered most of the parameters quite well. Ashish, anything you have missed out, and anything you want to add?
Only sir, on the IO, also with a small pupil, what I do is there are two settings in the IO which you can use. So if you have a IO, there's on the inferior side, there is a large pupil and a small pupil. So even on an undilated patient or a mild mid-dilated patient, you can use the small pupil setting and you can make the light size very small. And in that, you can also see with a non-dilated patient, you can see the posterior fold to a fairly decent quality image. So even with the undilated patient, you can use the IO, just see the small pupil settings and make the light smaller. So that is one thing that I think I missed previously in the examination.
Yeah, in a small, I use a small pupil also in a media opacity, where there is a lot of glare and lot of internal reflections if you are using a very large pupil illumination. So if I suppose there is a case of vitreous hemorrhage or a case of end-off, where I just want to know basically if the retina is attached or not, I can obviously do an B scan, but
Correct.
you can't. Suppose you don't have the facility right now, but
Yes,
you want
yes.
to just look whether those vessels are retinal vessels can be visible or no, then at that time small pupil kind of helps, because the internal scatter of the light is minimum.
Yes, yes,
Also, when there is an asteroid, so a small pupil helps to see just a overview of the retina. Yeah.
So,
What
I think,
should be,
yes,
there is one
silicone
question.
oil.
Silicon oil.
Silicone oil filled eye color Navela, generally, see anything in the vitreous is green. So now there's some confusion with the silicone oil, but generally I use wavy lines, just 3-4 wavy lines, green color, and you can label it as a silicone oil filled eye. So that is the color coding that you can use. Anything in the vitreous cavity, you use green. But you can use wavy lines. It's mentioned differently in different textbooks, but I think green wavy lines will do it and do the labeling, and that will be more than enough.
So what I do is I just draw a circle, a big circle for silicone oil, which is abutting to the ora serrata, and label it as silicone filled eye. And if I draw a circle and I draw say wavy lines from one edge to other edge 3-4, then I usually keep it for the C3F8 or the SF6 gas.
Okay.
And if blue line with blue circle with the wavy lines, then that is for the air filled eye. So these are things which the examiner is going to pardon you, because these are not so common and given differently in different textbooks. So you have to label them correctly.
Labeling, I think, is most important for
The
these.
fact that you have picked up silicone oil, that itself is a big thing.
Correct.
So I think thank you, Ashish. It was a short but a detailed presentation, and you have covered all the aspects of retinal examination. And I think it's a good video which will be available on the YouTube, which all of you before your practical exams should refer to for a quick revision. And any of you interested in taking up retina or uvea later on must master your indirect ophthalmoscope. In fact, if you ask us, our direct ophthalmoscopy is horrible after becoming the retinal surgeons. If you would be better than us in doing direct ophthalmoscopy, but because we have mastered the indirect so much that we cannot do away with it. Thank you, students, for logging in. I want all of you to still forward the invite to most of your colleagues outside Maharashtra. I see that the same names coming up and attending. I'm happy for that, but I want you to spread the word, and I want this PG forum to be utilized more by people. So don't be hesitant to forward it to your friends, because they also would be having their interstate PG sessions. If you forward it to them, they will forward some sessions to you. So I want more participation, because lecturers are taking extra efforts. Now Ashish has his own clinic. He has taken out time to teach you all. So you should be more enthusiastic and attend more in numbers. I know you can go on the YouTube and watch it later, but live presentation is something different. Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. And any doubts, you all can contact me. or
Yes.
Sumit sir in the groups, and we'll surely solve your doubts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swapnesh sir. Thank you, Sumit sir.
Bye.